Uh, Thank you very much, Shivramji, for agreeing to be with us today. Welcome to all the participants and to our distinguished speaker for today. Today is the 31st session, 31st webinar in the series Analytics Wednesday. And it's a very interesting session today, Analytics Journey from Assurance to Predictive, because I think most managements or most groups are looking forward to predictive analytics to really help the organization rather than only provide assurance. So a very interesting session today. Summa Audit has been at the forefront to bring technology tools to organizations, to internal auditors, forensic experts, finance professionals in the last 20 years. Other than IDEA, which is the flagship product, you have Smart Exporter, which is a ETL for SAP. There's LSA, which is continuous control monitoring. There's working papers now, Caseware working papers, which is for the CPA firms, CA firms, end-to-end solution for the CA firms, chartered accountant firms, and so on. So there are a number of solutions which are being offered by Summa Audit to professionals. Today's session is supported by Government of Canada Trade Commissioner Service, and I'm happy to announce that now post-COVID, in Feb first week, we would be having a session at the High Commission of Canada in New Delhi in their premises, where we would be happy to host a few, 20 to 25 chief internal auditors who would join us for a session there. So without getting into too much about Summa Audit and the other aspects, let me formally introduce Shivramji. So I think that's important. He's currently working as a chief audit executive with Titan Company Limited, a Tata flagship company. He has 28 plus years of internal audit experience in both consulting and industry. He has worked across wide spectrum of corporates, MNCs, American, European, Asian, Indian conglomerates, listed companies, as well as promoter-driven organizations. His industry domain experience ranges from infrastructure, manufacturing, aviation, telecom to consumer durables, FMCG, retail, hospitality, etc. His work domain: audit, compliance, SOX, risk management, COSOD, ethics committee, whistleblower program. So in various roles, he has led several corporate governance agenda and has been integral part of several cross-functional team on a various large-scale transformation and strategic projects. I think this is important, important experience, important platform for a chief internal auditor to deliver to an organization. His team was awarded the IA Award 2019 for the best use of technology for automated analytics and continuous auditing. So I think that sets the stage for him, because that is why we require to listen to him carefully and get his words of wisdom. So over to you, Shivramji. I'm looking forward to your session today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepji. It's an honor to be a part of this session, and without much ado, I'll probably just start my session. Let me just share my screen. I hope it is visible to everyone.
Yes.
Okay, so this topic is around the analytics journey from assurance to predictive, and what I'm going to do is just quickly talk about the aspect of data analytics in governance. What does it want to achieve, and talking more around the governance and the internal audit platform is that it has to allow you to move from a code to a more, from basic dal roti that we gave as a standard internal audit set of scope. How do we make it a much larger buffet kind of a setup with the various flavors? It moves from a how to a wow. You're wondering as to what is to be done, how is it to be done, what is to be presented, and from that to giving a wow factor to your customers. Actually, COVID has also done a lot of this remote working, but more of moving from site visits and plant visits and warehouse visits. How do we do a lot of stuff and give an assurance or give any kind of advisory service sitting at one place, at corporate or a centralized place. So the there to here is another transition. And lastly, most important from an audit perspective, moving from a sample base to a completely ample base. So, gone are the days when you can say, I did a sample of 50, or this sample is fairly representative of the population. It has to be the population now, for which they would, which our customers and stakeholders look at a measure or a sense on. So that's the journey which analytics will, should typically in any process or anywhere should try and achieve this for the internal audit. Having said this, I think one of the major things which I have been interacting, and I've myself also struggled and somewhere misunderstood analysis with analytics. So that's one important aspect that we need to know. We do a lot of analysis. A typical looking at a vendor invoice and trying to figure out, is it the right set of invoice, right set of payment on a page is also on a hard copy paper is also an analysis. I think large number of times I have seen even my own teams where they get confused between analysis and analytics. Analytics is a much larger scope, and it actually converts all the analysis that you do into a much more automated, online, recurring, large scale kind of a activity. Only then your analysis actually gets converted into something called your analytics project. And as I constantly say, I don't have a slide on this, but the ABC of analytics is that A is for analytics and B is belief, C is certainty. So analytics allows you to move from certain beliefs to certainty. Now, typical example, if someone says, how's the weather? You may still say, I believe it's a bit warm as compared to other cases. But if someone says, what's 2 plus 2? You'll never say, I believe it's 4. You'll always say it's 4. That's the certainty. So how does the analytics, which converts certain amount of beliefs or thoughts or, certain aspects which you feel are probably not the right thing or definitely right thing, how do you convert it into a certainty? So that's the ABC of analytics that we speak about. And very quickly, I'm going to touch upon this just so that, as we progress, we understand what, when we talk about some examples, real life examples. So there are 4 types of analytics that we talk about: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. Now, descriptive, and I'm going to take a business case, not a audit or a control issue, but a typical business challenge. Now, I've worked with telecom for a long time. In telecom, one of the biggest things is, people who are prepaid customers churn out of my system. Okay, and because of this number portability, also he just is today is an A operator, he just moves to B operator, and that's a big cost or a big impact which the telecom operators try to avoid. So descriptive analysis will probably only give you what happened, how many people in the last 6 months or the last 1 year or the last 15 days in a particular circle, in a rural or an urban subcircle or an area, how many people churned out from my network to another network or vice versa also. Okay, that's descriptive on what happened. Diagnostic is trying to figure out why it happened or what were the parameters. Okay, so if 25 people moved out of, let's say, Vasant Kunj area in the last 3 months to another, what was the challenge? Were they low data user? Are they in a particular colony? Is there low network issue? Or where does their tower signals were normally catching up? That's the diagnostic that one does to figure out what's their age profile, so on and so forth. Then we move to predictive, is when we say, okay, with the hindsight benefits of descriptive and diagnostic, how many such people are now falling under that category that they are a potential churn? That means these guys are also put up in the same location. These guys are also in the same age profile. These guys are also probably looking at a less data or more data, so on and so forth. And therefore we predict as to, okay, hey, listen, potentially these 100 people seem to be in that category of where they could possibly churn out. And then we come to the prescriptive. Okay, if we have understood what happened, why happened, and whom could it impact, is when we say, okay, how do we address these particular set of customers? Do we give them some top up? Do we give them some bonus? Do we do some cold calling? Do we assure them, reassure them, so on and so forth? So these are the 4 types of analytics, predominantly internal audit in control environments. We're going to talk about the first 3 only, not as much onto prescriptive aspect from an analytics perspective. Okay, so that's what we're going to restrict, but these are the 4 types of analytics. Now, of talking about, what analytics should achieve, what are the types of analytics, I'm going to take maybe the next 10, 12 minutes and give some examples, and these are real life examples. At some places I can show templates because those are from my current organization and I can quickly show the templates, but there are some where I have to explain verbally because these are from my past organizations. I don't have that data to develop, but I can obviously share the knowledge. Now, this is a very standard, typical purchase requisition, which is purchase order versus GRN versus invoice versus payment. This is a very standard. I think most of us would be doing it, but as an analytics on a periodic basis, on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, on a quarterly basis, you can typically take out and say where the purchase order is not backed by PR, where the GRNs are greater than PO, where the invoice value seems to be more than the GRN, and where the payment. So that's a typical 5-way match, so to say, where you can typically take out any analytic report to say, okay, on a monthly basis, these are the exceptions between A to E in this particular case. That's just one analytics. I'm not delving much into it, but that also happens to be a part of analytics. Now, this is a very important story. I'll just take probably a little bit more time here. Is that, so there was this snacks manufacturing company, which was, facing a lot of challenge on a lot of sales returns happening, and a lot of these sales returns were happening. And the company was slightly worried because they were saying, we are a cash and carry model. The distributor pays money. Then he asks for a product. Then he says, I didn't ask for this. I asked for something else. And there is a lot of forward and reverse logistics cost, which is going on. Because he's paying in cash, we don't believe it's a sales dumping issue. And therefore, what's happening is there is a lot of distributor resentment. And also we are missing out the actual sale in the secondary market. So a lot of things. And then we as auditors were also looking at it, and we did an extremely large amount of analytics here. We tried to do, okay, what is the percentage of sales return if we consider distributor geography? What's the percentage of sales return if we consider the transporter who's carrying it? What's the percentage of sales return if we consider the type of vehicle which is going? What's the percentage basis the sales order, whoever punches the sales order, what's the percentage of return basis that? And a whole lot of loading bay wise, so on and so forth. A big, fairly large amount of data being analyzed. It was not analytics, it was analysis that we did at a very large scale. And the only trend which we were seeing, which could be a root cause, was that orders loaded between 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. were where the maximum as a percentage of return was happening. And then when we went back and we tried to do a more root cause and causal analysis in a 5i, then we figured out that what had happened was, number one, the secondary packaging, these boxes, as you see, earlier for each type of product or a flavor, there was separate box, but then company tried to rationalize that cost. So they made one common box and they probably put 4 or 5 stickers or a printed stuff on that saying, okay, is this A flavor, B flavor? And someone would put a tick with a marker pen on that. And one of the other things that we were doing was a warehouse hygiene audit. And we realized that, the percentage of yellow bulbs was much, much more than the allowed as compared to the percentage of white bulbs. So between that 4:30 to 5:30, the light was not good enough for the picker to actually figure out what was the tick. Okay, and therefore he was actually picking a B flavor instead of A because he could not differentiate between the ticks. And that was the reason why when the distributor received B, he said, listen, I asked for A, why have you given me B? And there were a lot of sales return. But this took a lot of analysis. Obviously, now things have moved. There are warehouse management, barcode scanners and all. But this definitely was an analysis, which then led to an analytics predominantly to, constantly keep this dashboard in mind that, okay, these 20 parameters, what's the sale return to that? Anyway, the sales return came down significantly, but that's just one more example of sales return. I'm going to be speaking about a few more examples here. Okay. And each of these have a different connotation. And as we move to the later part of the session, I'll be able to correlate with these. Now, this is more around the coal loading. This is a port business. Now, if you look at it, the coal comes in a ship like this, and each of these small things are called hatches. They're not small, they're actually quite big. And each of these are called hatches, and this is where the coal is stored. Now, this crane picks up this coal and then this puts it in this conveyor belt, which is here. And the challenge is that the only thing is that the crane can only go in this direction. It can't come to this side, or this side. It's a pretty straight direction, comes up and then moves in. So what used to happen is that the coal which is lying on the corners, we would actually send in excavators or machines to push it to the center, and then this crane can pick it up. That's a business activity. And again, this was an analysis that we did, and amongst the various analysis, just to give a hypothetical figure, is that this was the volume of business in each of those shipments which happened, and this was the volume of the machine hours used when we were pushing in the coal to the center. Okay, and if you look at it, as the volumes were going down, this is an average per shipment tonnage, and the average per shipment machine hour, this gap was widening. This gap was widening as there were lesser thing. And in isolation, okay, because there could be a variable, non-variable thing, but the only thing that we understood was that the payment was actually on basis of this variable per shipment cost. So therefore, while the machine hour was less, the payments were happening in these trends. So that was a flag, and this came through this combination of analysis and all. And subsequently, we understood that the organization was now looking at part shipment. So what would happen is this ship would come, and maybe 7 tons is what we needed to pick, and the balance 8 tons would go to the next port, which was someone else's, and therefore it happened. So to take out the 7 ton, I could actually take it without any excavator being used and pushed to the center. So therefore, what was happening was that I was not using it at all, and therefore my utilization per shipment was coming down. But because I had agreed on a variable model, which was very good from our perspective, because our payments are completely variable to the business, but end of the day, we were paying for something which we were not using. And this actually came through this analysis, which subsequently became an analytics, because now every location that we would go, every port we would go, we would have this report pretty handy with us to talk about the per shipment volume, per shipment machine hour, per shipment deployment, time it takes, berthing charges, marine charges, so on and so forth. And there's just one more thing to say, that this is how one, through analysis getting converted to analytics, we looked at this. Very pretty simplistic. Every accountant would know this. We are in a retail business, and we do stock takes at our retail stores. And this analytics basically talks about, and this is a real life case. You can see this is our project called Titan Analytics. This is basically saying that, listen, I did the audit on 1st May. If you are able to track my cursor, I did the audit on 1st May. On the 1st May, there was a stock transfer memo, which on the 4th day got cancelled. Now, it is quite possible that the guy wanting to address the shortages could have created a fictitious stock transfer memo. I would have come, I would have looked at my cutoff procedure also and said, okay, yes, this is a parcel being made ready to send or whatever it is. And actually it's cancelled. So this is something that we send as analytics on a periodic basis, saying how many regions have problem, what's the months in which we have a problem, what are the months, which region, which store, and then you click on these and you get this information. I'm sorry, I get the information, and it will tell you what was the product, what was the quantity, what's the value. So is it a stuff which the stores are trying to manipulate? There could have been a genuine case also, but these are typically a very, very classic case of analytics of how a cutoff procedure could also be misused per se. This is another classical case. People who worked in SAP would understand segregation of duties. There is someone who would park the document, someone who would post the document, then someone would do an invoice, okay, and then finally there will be a payment batch. Now, typical SOD conflict in SAP, if you look at it, anyone having a right here and here is a problem. Anyone having a right here and here, same guy having rights here and here is a problem. Now, in our organization, we've accepted this segregation of duties because we are allowing a person A to have rights both for posting as well as invoice for some business reasons, which we as auditors have not. But what we felt was that all cases where this has happened by the same guy, the intent in our organization was whatever he posts, he should not do this activity, but he will have rights to do this for someone else who is posting the vendor invoices. But There are cases where both of this has been done by the same person, but that's not good enough. Sorry, just give me a second. But that's not good enough, because what we are identifying is what is the change type that at the time of posting, if the sparking guy has, let's say, put all the right set of data, but if he goes and changes the vendor and he only does the invoice, because the invoice, physical invoice or the digital invoice keeps passing through all these stages and it is to be verified. So we are seeing all cases where the posting and invoice has been done by the same guy. What is the change type? Now, 0 is put here because if I change to amount, then I can give a filter of what's the value of amount also. How many number of cases, which user has done it, which department, what's his ID, and what is the change value. So this is a vendor change. The old value was 505. This was a vendor code. This is the new vendor code. So again, this is not this is an analytics which goes to them every month. This was the first lot which we did in, so that was a 9-month-old data, but this now goes every month, and anyone who wants to check and recheck does it. So that's again a way of ensuring or strengthening the control environment. Happy to pause if there are any questions till now, or I can continue.
I think if any of the participants have questions, they can put it in the chat box or Q&A. And
Sure.
we'll be happy to take it up now or maybe at the end.
Yeah, either ways.
No questions so far, Shiva.
Okay. I'm just saying, happy to take any question, any given point of time, because the essence of these is more important as we progress. I'm just trying to give as many live examples for people to typically understand what's the kind of analytics.
Just one question, Shiva.
Sure.
This example of segregation of duties from SAP.
Yeah.
You said the internal audit gives it to the operations every month.
Yeah.
So now, how does it help the operations, by having this repetitive analytics, because that can be done by the operations people themselves later on once, you have identified this particular objective.
Actually, you've touched the right nerve. See, end of the day, all these are not auditors' responsibilities. These are typically the process owners or control owners' responsibility. What auditor is doing is facilitating a stronger control environment. So in our organization, we've said that, listen, for the first 2 years, we will keep feeding you this. And this is not a report. You don't have to give us any answers. You rectify. As far as we as internal auditors are concerned, whenever we come to audit, we'll be using same logics to pick our sample. And if we find a problem, then clearly it's going to reflect badly on you, because you're going to be, this is something which has been fed to you and you have not acted upon. And over a period of time, it's a kind of a plug and play for them. So once they are okay, they've looked at it, they find merits or whatever it is, and we tweak, it's like a bot kind of a thing, build, operate, and transfer. Then we transfer it to them, then it becomes their control tool.
Another question which has been posted by someone is, won't the SAP GRC tool help prevent this exact situation?
No. So what SAP GRC tool says is that there is a conflict of SOD conflict, because Shivram has a right both for posting and invoice. Okay, it highlights. In my business, I feel that, listen, there are a lot of things which Shivram has to do. So I am living with this. So there's a sign of risk acceptance, yes, but with the primary thing that Shivram will not do the invoicing, invoice posting for whatever he has done the basic posting. He will not do the invoice clearance. That's the idea. But there are cases when it happens, or there is an opportunity for Shivram to misuse. So GRC tool highlighted, business risk accepted, internal audit only throwing insights on where all this could have been misused.
Got it. Please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is another typical, this is a stores return, which is our retail stores return. So typically we operate with a lot of franchisees. And when we come up with different schemes, so typically he will have his own margin. So let's say 100 rupee watch, I sell him at 40 rupees and he makes 60 rupees or whatever. Or let's say I sell him at 80 rupees and he makes 20 rupees. Now suddenly I come up with a activation scheme and I say, okay, 20% off on all Raga watches. And therefore, what he would sell at 100, he would end up selling at 80, and therefore, and he's bought at 80 and he needs that 20 rupees. So we reimburse him that 20 rupees because he's a franchisee. Yeah. So the analytics here, I'll probably start from the bottom, is that if you look at this third line, the guy returned a product on 3rd and the same guy bought the same product on 3rd, and what he returned was actually purchased on 14th of December. What it means is, as for this transaction, 14th December, Shivram went and purchased a watch. On 3rd December, January, he comes and returns it. Our policy allows exit return. We take it back. And on the same day, Shivram again buys this watch. Okay, very odd. But what has happened is, on 14th of December, our franchisee would have sold him at 100 rupees. On 3rd January, when he comes, I would give him a credit of 100 rupees. And then again, I will rebuild the same watch at 20 rupees. And I will tell my company that, listen, I have given this additional 20 rupees to. It's quite possible that Shivram did not come after 14th December. But it's only the franchisee just trying to pass a sale and a sale return entry. So his stocks are managed. It's just that he is able to claim another additional 20 rupees because the original invoice was without discount. So there was no discount credit there, but this one was with a discount, which he claims from us. So this is the insight. Sorry. And this is what we say. We allow the users to have that flexibility to say, okay, what's the gap you want between original date to the return date? You believe that anything which happens within 2-3 days possible, because I might have bought, then he comes and says, hey, there was a scheme. Why did you not tell me I could have come after 3 days, 4 days? So let them put how many days within which, I mean, if it is 150 days afterwards he's coming, not an issue. So the user puts what he wants here. And also, this is 3rd January, 3rd January. This is the 1st January and 18th January. How many days within which he should have resold it? That's another threshold, and basis which the visualization gives them which are the big stores, which are the big customers, what's the discount amount for East, what's the number of customers. So, if there are number of stores are less and number of cases are more, that gives probably a discomfort that, these stores are probably doing something more hanky-panky than the others. So this is another analytics, which again started from IA analysis. We did this analysis and now it's got converted into analytics on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. We share this.
I think Satish has a question here.
Yeah.
Would you have 5 minutes to explain how you went about implementing Titan Analytics initiative? So because you have talked about 2 initiatives, you talked about 2, dashboards or 2 pieces of information which you send out to operations. So what is, how did you go about Titan Analytics initiative?
Okay, so I mean, my idea was to give all these examples and then share about how we went about doing this, but happy to answer it very clearly. Titan has been an extremely data-oriented, data-centric and analytics-centric organization, but these have primarily been happening in business. All we did was to say that we need to start with it. The first thing we did is every analysis or analytics that we would do in an internal audit would get compulsorily converted, if possible, if there is very little of manual interventions and stuff like that, would get converted into analytics. It was a part and parcel of the KRA of the team, and he would have to get it converted, or he would need a sign off as to why it is not getting converted. Why first he did not use any analytics or analysis, large scale analysis in an audit, and then gets converted. Once we did that, and second thing, we had to prove our case. So therefore we started with Excel, and we would do it for 9 months, 10 months and stuff like that. And we started feeding it to the process owners without, as I said, our mail states that this is not an audit report. This is not going to be escalated. You look at it. We would only come and do, whenever we come and do a review, we'll certainly see how effectively you are using this tool. And as they started using it, we also started refining it. There were inputs, our algorithms would change. And then finally, till the time we had not invested in a tool or anything, what we did was, even these things would take a little bit of steps in Excel or whatever it is. Once the business okayed it, we also got funded from them the fact that we converted all this into an RPA. We had an internal bot team. He just wrote this entire RPA of the all Excel keystroke loggers, and then it became. So if you ask me, we started with a very specific KRAs. We did not have a huge number in mind. We just started with it. The team understood the concept. It became their KRA. Second thing is, when we started pushing it, we did not sound it as if it is an audit report. You have to respond, you have to work or whatever. But at the same time, given them a part of what do you say, a fear of God saying, listen, I'll also come if I find this is a problem, and you're not use this thing for your review, obviously it's going to reflect badly on you guys. I mean, and effectively, if you ask me, these guys have actually come back and said, no, we've recovered a lot of money here, so on and so forth. And what we've also started doing now is that whenever now we send, we also give them a trend, because my intent is also to see this, not that every month I'm saying 60, 70 cases, because then there's no objective of analytics. We now give a trend also saying, hey, last month you were at a 50, now you are at a 40, went up to 45, now you are at a 30, 20 or whatever it is, just to show the increasing, or rather the decreasing trend of exceptions. I don't know whether it helps, Satish, but
I think, yes, I think it is quite, it did. So I think it is helpful. Yes, very much.
Okay, thanks. So, okay, this is important. I'm pretty proud of it myself. This is typically on the overtime. I think as internal auditors, we must have reported overtime not being paid, overtime being breached, so on and so forth, or the statutory limit being breached. So this is something what we do is every 15th of the month, we identify what is the total labor hour worked, person-wise, what is the overtime which he has done. And it's a fairly complicated algo that we have put in place to say, okay, if he has to achieve his target for the month, what will be the total man hours required? And if I allocate it equally amongst all, or in the ratio that he has worked till date, what will be the overtime in the balance number of days he would probably incur, and whether there will be a excess and whether there will be a breach. If you can understand this thing, what we are trying to say is this 9004 has worked for 90 hours. He's worked for 9 days. So there is 9 hours of overtime. If we have to equally share the total load of the balance, he'll probably work for 112 days, no problem. 106 guy, if he takes another 112, between these days, he'll have a 131, and 19 hours will be the overtime, and out of which 5 hours would be a breach of the standard overtime hours that way. So this is, as you can understand, predictive. And every day from 15th to 30th, we keep changing. And this is just to show that this is the same chart which I showed. And obviously you can pick up department in allocation. There is no breach. Therefore, that's the only option available. Within the breach, how many hours of breach will happen? So this is on 15th of August. And then on the 18th of August, again, just to probably shows you 9013, 103. 9013 has already worked actual for 124, and how his overtime apportionment will possibly. So this will help people to probably do a more better rostering, and also look at least those cases where I could have a potential statutory breach of the maximum prescribed overtime. So that's another example. This is very clear. We are working in various states. There's a lot of state level GST which needs to be adjusted. So the same vendor has multiple GST registration, therefore multiple vendor code. Now this is a very classic case where we say that there is one PAN, okay, and he has 5 accounts, which is as per the process. We need 5 accounts because 5 GST registration, but 5 vendor codes, same PAN, but one of them tagged as MSME, the rest 4 not tagged as MSME. Because this was a new vendor code creation. This guy thought I have given my MSME registration. The other guys will put it. The other guys forgot to put it. So this is like a one-time master check, which can happen every quarter to see whenever there is a new code created. And so this was basically saying, hey, listen, you have 5 guys who are actually MSME, but you've tagged only one as MSME, and therefore you could miss out on a lot of compliance requirements for the rest of the MSME. However, this is more around a vendor master analytics, and this also goes on a quarterly basis, and only the differential. And here we put, listen, we identified these 5 in the past, you have not done it. And so how many exceptions, how many from past and how many from the new vendor code created, that's what this analytics gives. okay, this is another important thing. This is typically an analytics which says that one person, how many vendor invoices he posts in a day, how many minutes he takes per voucher. And this is another aspect, which is vendor intensity, which basically means, because there are a lot of times, courier, transport bills, which are bulk uploads. So obviously it will appear as if he has uploaded 100 invoices, whereas it's typically, done one check and then uploaded all. So this vendor intensity ratio is nothing but number of vendors divided by number of invoices. So if there is one vendor, 100 invoices, the score will be 0.01. If it is 100 invoices and individual 100 vendors, that means the score will be 1. So effectively, closer to 1 means he needs more diligence. Closer to 0.01 means he needs lesser diligence. Again, the user punches in saying, okay, what's the best a guy can do? So anyone who puts more than 25, this guy feels that, my guys cannot do more than 25 vouchers. And let's say he says less than 3 minutes is a problem. Anyone who takes less than 3 minutes, I'm worried. And, as 70 is a good vendor intensity, we know how many people in a single day during the period April to October 21 have done 25 vouchers in a day with less than 3 minutes per voucher, with a vendor intensity of 0.7, and it comes with the month-wise details. And then obviously you have which location, which month, and then you says this Roshan guy in Chikbalapur on 1st June created 45 vendor documents covering 16 vendors, and he took 0.02. Now this is a worrying thing. How could one guy post, things in a 0.02 minutes? So this is again an input to them. It is up to the accounts payable and the shared service team to figure out actually what happened. But when we go for audit, when we do accounts payable audit, we take samples from these kind of exceptions. Simple case, PO splitting, need not deliberate much on this. Vehicle overloading, again, a scenario where ports businesses are all target driven on quantums and volumes. How many tons of business are we doing? Similar to the overtime, every 15th we take a report saying, okay, what's the quantum of business you have done? What's your target? Using the algorithms of typical product type, because a coal and a gypsum will have different capacity that can be loaded onto a similar size truck. So all the algorithms to say, hey, listen, if you want to achieve your target, this is your average truckload size, and therefore you are bound to overload now, or maybe as you progress and do less and less business, incremental business, by the end of 20th or 25th, there would be a clear potential that if I have to achieve the target, I will end up overloading my trucks. So these are a few examples I thought I'll just share through the past few years of my journey on analytics. Now coming to the stages, we're talking about this journey from assurance to advisory to predictive kind of a thing. I'll pause, just take questions before we move to this. This is
you can ask questions in the chat box or Q&A. One question for you, Shiva: how many such analytic reports are you posting to the process owners? How many reports are created every month, or sent out to the process owners?
As of
and
now,
what is the criticality? And what is the criticality? How do you rate these various reports? What is the criticality? High, medium, low, or you feel all are okay? What is the?
So today we are not getting into that cycle, because this is as you can see the dates. It's basically in the last 12-15 months that we have been doing all this. Okay,
right.
And what we are trying to do is, with all due respect to my organization, they have not seen this, so it's also a bit much for them to also digest right now. Okay, and so therefore what we are doing is, we are not trying to categorize anything into a high, medium, low. What we are simply trying to do is making sure that every audit that we complete throws off at least 2 such analytics idea. And the second part is, I now have a dedicated resource. I now have a dedicated tool. I now have dedicated hardware and infra. So now we can probably do more. Otherwise, we were churning out new ones, maybe one or two a month. So effectively, we would be at, I think, a 21 or 22. I think we sent one today. fresh one. So I think we'll be around 22, 23 such insights as of now.
Great. Yeah. I think there are no questions, so you can
Sure.
continue with your presentation, please.
Okay. So as we say, we look at it now, we are talking about we assure, we advise, and we anticipate. That's what the big ask is from the internal audit fraternity. And obviously assurance is more around internal audit. Advisory could be advisory as well as, your continuous control monitoring. And then obviously anticipative in predictive. Now, what's the core difference between these three? Assurance is something which is, purely rule based. Predominantly, there will be a set of things which will be A should be equal to B, or A should not be equal to B, or A should be less than B, or less than equal to B. A minus B should be 5 days or 5% or 10%. These kind of, delay in receipt, PO versus PR, quality, and there's fairly rule-based things. And if there are exceptions, those become the first stage of analytics. That's on the assurance. Advisory moves to the next stage or where there are insights. So if there is a PO without a PR, that's one which is a rule based. Obviously, that should be there as an assurance. The next stage is, okay, all cases PO without PR, what has been the stock holding norm? That's the next level, because typically PO without PR will lead to unwarranted procurement. If that is the insight, is it leading to unwarranted procurement? So can we link that to the rule? And obviously foresight is, whatever is the root cause for PO without PR, what will it end up into is a foresight is one common theme when you look at the objective with which you need to move to these, or how you transition from your assurance to anticipatory. The second part is, what does assurance focus on? Assurance primarily focus on controls. Okay, typically I need to ensure that the control is that no PR, no PO. So the assurance focuses on that. The advisory part focuses on the operations and operating effectiveness. And obviously the anticipation is more around, okay, what would happen in future if these controls were not there, or these trends were there, which could indicate a potential breakdown of controls. Lastly, assurance in real term talks about the process compliance and adequacy, whereas advisory is more around how do I make sure that my process objectives are met in a more effective and efficient manner. And anticipatory is a potential. I'll take each one of them one by one. So when we look at assurance and internal audit, we need to keep what's the domain that we have. Now, typically the customer here is also the internal audit team. It uses a lot of output from this analytics, which would be my standard rules and exceptions. Again, I keep talking about PO without PR, or frequent returns, or anything related to inventory holding, so on and so forth. So the customer is still IA team who would now go and delve further into it, but use a much larger population, or rather an output from a much larger population. Should it be target based? No. When we did our coal loading, unloading, we didn't have anything in mind. We never thought it is going to be like that. But we did a packet of analytics of sales trend, cost trends, business trend, volume trend, day wise, ship wise, vessel wise, so on and so forth. A lot of things, something came out of that. So it need not necessarily be target based, but we need to be very clear on what are the trends and analytics that we need to use. And typically, as I talked about, these are standard rules, and that's why customer is IA team. From an objective perspective, this analytics is first of all to identify potential problems. Now, it was typically, as I said, the coal unloading was a typical case, which was a potential problem which we figured out. It was target based when we did the snacks manufacturing sales return, that we needed to focus really why the sales return is happening. And then through the analytics, we figured out the problem is at a particular time of the day, and therefore need to focus on why that is happening at that point in time, which brings to the second objective, which is sampling. When I was working in one of the organizations, we were doing a payroll and an HR payroll audit, and then one of the typical risks being ghost employees. We did a complete analytics on the entire 8,000 people, and it was for the last 4 years. Thankfully, we had that data, whereby we said, okay, what are the 5 things which an employee does And can from this 8,000, can we figure out which are the employees who have not done this 5? For instance, he is not claimed, he is not taken leave on any day. He is not claimed any reimbursement till date. Wherever there is an option to have a tax friendly reimbursement kind of a package, let's say earlier you could claim your medical bills and all. How many people have not claimed this? How many people have never been promoted? And with a kind of that thing, when we narrowed it down from the 8,000, we could actually come down to, and we finally said all 5 not there, and then all 5 not there, 4 not there, 3 not there, kind of a thing. And we came down to close to around 60-70 people. And then that was our sample to actually physically go and check whether those guys exist. And actually we could find 3-4 people who were not there, and they were ghost employees. There could have been more, but if you had done a random sample by checking few from sale, few from supply chain, few from marketing, we may not have identified. And obviously this will give you a complete scale and size of the problem, which is what whenever we now discuss audit observation, they say, okay, you found these, but how does it translate into an overall scheme of things? In terms of component, this allows you, first of all, to be ready day 0. That's the concept we are saying. Day 0 readiness is what we are looking at Titan internal audit, is that when I am going for my procurement audit, or when I am going for my manufacturing audit, these 25-30 standard rule outputs, I may not be looking at it daily. I may not be looking at it monthly. I may not be even sharing most of them because there could be a lot of false positives there. But when I start my audit, or -7 days when I'm doing my groundwork, this report is available at a click of button rather than me going, downloading and applying all logics. And obviously, therefore, it has to be very clear in time, understanding the data sources. And when you are doing your analytics for assurance, the usage, once the creation happens, the usage is going to be more around closer to the start of audit or whatever. Clear watch out. Don't put in too many algorithms at this stage. Don't spend too much time on visualization. Be ready to face a lot of false positives. So overall, what I wanted to kind of summarize here is that the analytics at stage 1, whether it is assurance or whatever, at stage 1, you are the users, you are the consumers. Focus more on standard risks, focus more on standard rules, apply these for your objectives of identification of problem, insightful sampling, and able to cascade it to the size and scale that you're looking at. Don't focus so much on putting too many algorithms here, too many visualizations. This can be a simple output report, and be ready to face false positives. And that's why, what Galib says, कि हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले, बहुत निकले मेरे अरमान लेकिन फिर भी कम निकले. So you'll have so many things you would want to do, you would want so much to extract because the list of standard risks and gaps are going to be so high. But trust me, with the number of false positive, how much you will be able to do a lot, but still it will be little as compared to your whole list of analytics that you would have. All of them will be useful insights, but how much we can derive and come out with issues in audit, primarily through analytics and large scale insights, could be slightly less. It would be enough, but it will be come.
Before you go ahead, Shiva, could we have a few questions, which are there?
Yes, sure.
I think there's Anamika Roy, who is talking about, what tools do you use for your dashboards? Are they connected to SAP for continuous data pull, or you do it standalone?
So as I said, initially, so as of now, if you look at our, this thing also, they're not very, very fancy. Okay. We are not really focusing too much on dashboards. It's ease of navigation that we are looking at it. We're not making too many charts and graphs, too many pie charts or whatever it is. And today our outputs are going in Excel because what we are doing is we are not really sending it to the CFOs and CEOs. We are sending it to fairly people who are, the accounts payable leads team and his boss and the overall account controller who will be in charge of account. These guys are more comfortable with Excel and they are able to play around with this. So our dashboards are output from ERPs, converted through various modes. We use Excel macros, we use Alteryx, we use SQL, we use one or two other opportunities, work it out, and then final output comes back into Excel.
There have been, of course, a lot of compliments, and I'm not going into that, Shiva, because
Not at all, not required. Please. Thank
so
you
I
so
think
much.
just one more thing. There was a Vivek who just asked that all the examples which you gave are control deficiencies and not audit findings.
Why wouldn't
Well,
be not an audit finding? Okay. I mean, I'm also just throwing that question because this. So first of all, this was an analytics done in an internal audit finding made, then converted into a continuous control analytics. Okay. The overloading of vehicle predictive, but every our auditor, when he would have done a logistics audit, would have talked about overloading. Every auditor would have talked about audits in terms of overtime breach and stuff like that. So those audits are now getting converted into insights. Point taken. These were audit findings which got converted into reflection of control deficiencies.
I'll just add, Shiva, that almost all the control deficiencies which you showed would lead to an audit finding.
Yeah, exactly. And probably the audit findings have led to this analytics end of the day.
Absolutely. So I think it's vice versa, because ultimately an auditor looks to a control deficiency to, find the transactions.
I mean, a vendor code who's an MSME not tagged as an MSME is an audit finding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe this may not be an audit finding, but this is a good insightful sampling to say, hey, someone is passing vouchers in 0.02 minutes. Might as well look those as samples to see whether he's exercised enough diligence or not. So this I agree. It's neither a control deficiency. This is neither an audit finding. This is more of a red flag kind of a thing.
Sure.
Okay. So we talked about assurance. Now we move to advisory. Now, so what we have done till now, my understanding, okay, is that we've done an audit. We have identified what Excel based or analytics that we have used. What were the checks we did to arrive at an audit conclusion? Even if it was not an audit finding, at least these were checks. So we have our standard risk, standard library, standard rules available. Yeah. So that's the starting point when I need to move to continuous monitoring. The next thing is whatever IA analytics or analysis that I have used against this standard liability takes to the red flags and false positives. Now, this is where I need to do all my churning, tuning, and everything, and come at an analytics insight listing. For instance, if we were to take an example for instance, this 0.7 vendor intensity. Okay, while this is not an audit finding, this was something which we had initially not considered. But when they came back to us, we fine-tuned it. Then we said, okay, this will also become a part of checking, or even in this particular thing, there were cases where the franchisee had himself probably extended some discount and not claimed with us. So we had to eliminate all those things rather than a standard. So the first standard was, a return which had no discount being given back, but a similar sale happening for which a discount is being claimed by the franchisee to me. That was a pure. Then when we did all the other things, so that is why this particular aspect of having the analytics insight listing becomes relevant. You could have a lot of things. As I said, PO without PR, then is it overstocking? Is it unnecessary advance? Those are the next level which you can link to your existing level of standard risk library. And that is what is going to lead you to a rule-based insight. So rule is there, and then how do you put your stuff and come to your insight? So now you have this thing. Now start looking at what is the impact and which are the ways and means I can actually get the analytics to identify the impact also. And few word of caution, go ahead and seek, and this is something Mr. Satish had asked, what we did. So these are things which we did. We asked, what is it that you want when we did our reports? Just a second, sorry, please. My apologies. So we sorted, we tried to keep it as simple as possible. We did not cloud it with too much of visualization. We provided the flexibility. We let the thresholds to be defined by them. 5 दिन में आने से प्रॉब्लम है 5 डालो, 10 दिन में आने से प्रॉब्लम है 10 डालो, 5 दिन में हो गया तो प्रॉब्लम है 5 मिनट 3 मिनट. We provided the entire flexibility to them, and we attacked area by area, which was in our case audit by audit. So fine. I mean, I have not done a diamond procurement audit yet. Maybe there are a lot of analytics sitting there, but when I do the diamond procurement audit, I'll probably move, or once I have a good team to settle down, that's when I'll do. But otherwise, we attack audit by audit, or in your case or in anyone's case, it can be area by area. Pick up accounts payable, hit it. Pick up logistics, hit it that way. And similarly, we do not make it an audit report. There's no explanation sought, nothing, only a little bit of fear of God. When we come, if we find a problem in this, you will also be somewhere accountable for it. We believe we should not burden with too many visualizations, and don't look at standard reports. Someone said this already GRC can consider. Absolutely right. So I'm not going to generate the GRC. GRC report generated, exception identified, risk accepted. What's the problem after that? So don't look at standard reports and don't publish common reports. We made this mistake. If you look at this, so these were various business divisions where there were splitting of purchase orders. And actually very, very in the right time, we did it in such a manner that now they could click on this, only their screen will open, they will have a password within Excel, they could do it. So, but be extremely cautious that don't release common reports, because you will be going through a lot of multiple areas. Your sources could be different, your regions could be different, but your analytics could be common. A big word of caution, don't publish common reports. Can I move ahead?
Yes, please. I think just one more question was there, that do you have any reports on IT controls?
We intend to. As of now, we don't have, honestly.
Sure. Please.
So again, गालिब हुई मुद्दत के गालिब मर गया पर याद आता है, वो हर एक बात पे कहना कि यूं होता तो क्या होता. This is exactly the challenge you will face in advisory. Keep constantly thinking, if this situation happens, what is it? If this situation happens, how is it? How is it going to impact my implication? How is it going to impact the effect? And therefore, you should constantly keep evaluating. अगर PR नहीं होता PO को, तो क्या होता, क्या होगा? That's how I'm just taking a very easy example of PRPO, because probably that resonates well with everyone. And therefore, this is the biggest challenge what we need to do, is that constantly keep thinking of iterations. And that's going to be the most important Gracell value add that you can do. Industry domain, control domain, I'm sure a lot of people will do. But as people who could, as genuine internal auditors, what we need to do next is looking at these kind of combinations of this thing. Okay, I'll move to predictive. So I probably want to put a very big caveat here, is that it's not going to be easy. Okay. And let me put it in terms of a pure number kind of a game. This is just an estimate. I don't have any science behind it. Let's say you have 100 standard risks or rules that you can come as analytics in the assurance part, 100 list. Okay. Typically, with possibility of algorithms and our state, while we are all now more digitized or whatever it is, but there are still fair amount of manual and scenarios and stuff like that. Maybe 40 of them can lead you to continuous monitoring, but that 40 can actually create probably 80 or 90 insights. So you'll come back to 100. If you're understanding what I'm trying to say, 1 to 100 cases, maybe 40 is where you can move to the next stage, but each of them can give you more than 2-3. So thereby you can come back to 100. But trust me, predictive is not going to be today basis what we have, and we are restricting it to our control environment and potential failures, potential breakdown. I would say I would be happy if I could say at least 10% of my count of analytics which are there are predictive. And I'm genuinely saying with all humility, because it's not an easy thing to do. It's so much of business, so much of this thing, so much of under appreciation, so to say, as of now, that it's going to be very difficult for you to put that kind of effort and get that kind of input. But logically, the way we need to progress, the way we are doing, looking at the real root cause, with all due respect to the entire audit fraternity, including myself, gone are the days we say a lack of review process and all as root cause. They are surely root cause, but let's go and hit the actual root cause. I'll speak about it. Look at the constraints, which are primarily as of now that one could think of are times and budget. what are the motivation, achieving targets, figure out the trends to identify the potential, and those are the candidates for predictive. Few examples that we are working on, we spoke about overtime, vehicle overloading, MSME payments. That's something I did not present here, but we're already doing it. Is that while today the entire company is saying, okay, MSME invoice book, due date tomorrow, how many days left? I mean, what's you kind of work. What we are saying is MSME material received, services received on one, invoice not paid, not booked. That is also predictive that you may fail. It's lying in someone's drawer or lying in someone's, what do you call that? To be done allocation or whatever it is. So that's MSME payment is something which we actually instituted, and we keep saying, and we keep sending the number of GRNs which were there last fortnight, this fortnight. This, in fact, we do every fortnight. Quality checks, as the 2 and 3 are similar, pre-delivery inspection, which we are working on today. It's prototype stage. Is that identify from your system what is the delivery dates for various products or various RMPM items over the next 30 days. Look at the quantum, apply your standard algorithms to say how many man hours you need, how many man-hours you have. So is it possible that I'm going to receive quantity whereby I need 48 man-hours to do this, and 6 people, 8-hour day, and I'm only having 4 hours, 4 people. If that's my standard template of number of people who do QC, do I stand exposed to the fact that this may end up not being done QC? Which again, basically, would it be a delayed QC? Is it a Kanban kind of a system, and how it happens? So that's a prototype, which, as I said, very similarly, whatever is going out, and this we tried in some other organization, and Titan, it's not really that relevant in terms of a pre-delivery inspection, is that, let's say in an automobile thing, it's going to go out and you need to do a certain amount of pre-delivery inspection. The logistics is already blocked. Do we have enough people to do it? So this is a time-driven kind of a thing. So that's, and we've also taken baby step. I have 5-6 predictives to I showcased, and important for us to understand what is the frequency. Over time, I need to do it every day for 15 days. I don't need to do it on day 1. I should probably do it from 15th to the 30th. Overloading, same thing, from 15th to the 30th. But MSME, I can do it every 15 days because 45 days is the due date. So every 15 days I still will probably cover 30 days of time frame. There is a humongous load on systems. My IT guys come and keep cribbing because the kind of algorithms you have to put in. So you'll have to really face that brunt and constantly keep asking, does it really need to be a real-time forecast futuring or whatever it is? And those are the basic things which are possible, as from assurance to advisory to anticipatory. I spoke about 2 Ghalib. This one is a completely a shairi which is seen behind the trucks. Kesh chupai nahi chupta aur risk dikhai nahi dikhta. It is very difficult for us risk people to constantly predict. ये वैसे ही हम doomsday sayers की तरह आते हैं, and more to say analysis के साथ मैं कह रहा हूँ देखो कल को overtime ज़्यादा हो जाएगा, breach कर जाओगे. Very difficult to convince. Appreciated, but they don't really want to. It's not a very, very easy acceptance and pat on the table. There will be a lot of pushbacks, and that's one of the biggest challenges, apart from the fact that this is not going to be a huge portfolio bucket. It's going to be small. It's going to be narrowed. It's going to be very specific, with some lot of clear constraints and targets that we need to keep in mind. And I guess that's about it from my side. Just leaving this thought to you. Don't misuse data analytics. And lastly, I am very cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of people who are, in this journey, and we've also faced the same thing. That's about it from my side. I'll stop sharing now.
Just one more question.
Sure.
If you're using RPA to arrive at these dashboards, how do you manage change controls of these RPA tools?
Okay, so we are fairly at a nascent stage where we are doubly sure the business signs off, business takes the budget. Now, one thing we have kind of agreed upon is that the business, and that's more on equity, that the business says I'll take care of the RPA development cost. And therefore, as of now, they are extremely cautious when they give a sign off. So we do a lot of engagement. And as of now, we've not faced that challenge. Therefore, I cannot answer it. I mean, I don't have an experience to say how big the problem is, but we are over cautious. Therefore, we are trying to insulate ourselves by saying, okay, if business will take the cost, it will be extra cautious in giving us a sign off. And therefore, and we will probably try and see how much can be done. But honestly, I don't have an answer today on the cost because of frequent changes to the RPA.
I think it is important, Shiva, that the journey has started. I think that's more important rather than thinking about everything to the last T. It's not possible to then undertake the journey.
Yeah. True.
So, any more questions? I think there are just appreciation, superb work, Shiva, that Satish is talking about. A lot of other people have said excellent practical presentation, a lot of tips. So I think there are no questions I can see, but what I can tell you is that if any of you want to ask Shiva anything or you want to ask him, then you can write to him or you can write to us and we'll send the query to him and he can answer it. Always available for all of you to,
absolutely. More than happy.
From Galib were Lajava. So I think that's one of the participants is writing that out. This is also being streamed live on YouTube, and this is going to remain on the Sama YouTube channel for everyone to have a look at it later on. So if there are no other questions, then I think Shiva, with your permission, will sign off.
Thank you.
I just want to say a very big thank you on behalf of Sama Audit. Personally, I want to say thank you to Shiva that after days hard work, you just came in the house and immediately sat down to do this session for us. Very good examples. Sounded very simple today, but I know as an internal auditor, as a practicing internal auditor, outsourced internal auditor, how difficult it is to do all these things in the field and get it done, get it passed by the auditee, have them, make them more aware. And I think what is important, what is coming out clearly as an internal auditor is that it is more important to make the auditees aware of what's happening and, leave behind things a little better than what they are, rather than just focus on audit findings and issue a report. So what we are saying is you're working with the auditees to make things happen. So, it's like a partnership with the auditor and the auditee. So I think that's excellent what has come out. And of course, analytics play a very big role in today's, with the explosion of digitization, explosion of so much of data which is available, pictures which is available. So there's so much of things happening in analytics and the journey has to start from there. Of course, predictive is very difficult, quite difficult to reach and also to convince people on what's happening. So thank you very much, Shiva, for this wonderful session.
My pleasure.
And thank you very much for all the participants who are there online right now. Let me just tell you that next week on Wednesday, we'll be having a session from Michael Schuppen, the Managing Director of Audicon GmbH from Germany, and Stern, his IT consultant, who will be talking on the Smart Exporter, which is, the ETL for SAP. And of course, the recently launched Smart Suite, they have launched around 128, analytics, direct analytics from SAP, which is procure to pay and order to cash cycles. So, which can be just plug and play for organizations which are having SAP installations. So I think they're going to talk about all that development which they did in Germany, which they have launched worldwide recently. So with case studies. So I think participants are welcome to please log on next week. With that, Shiva, thank you once again. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you all. Signing off.
Thank you.